Aston Martin's car isn't just slow. It's destroying itself while driving. 2 races into the 2026 season. Australia, China. And the team is already dealing with battery damage, forced retirements, and a car they can't even push to the limit. But here's the part that makes this insane. The problem isn't coming from a crash. It's not bad luck. It's not even a single failure. It's coming from the car itself. From the engine, sending vibrations through the entire structure. Straight into the battery. Breaking it. Race after race. And now, just days before the Japanese Grand Prix, Aston Martin has finally revealed the real cause. A hidden issue so complex. It connects the engine, the chassis, and the energy system all at once. Which means this isn't a quick fix. This is a system failure. And if they can't solve it before Suzuka, then what you're about to see won't just be a bad performance. It could be a complete collapse. Subscribe now, because the real reason behind this problem is worse than anyone expected. Right after Australia, the warning signs were already there. But almost nobody noticed. Because from the outside, it just looked like a slow car. A team struggling to find pace. Something we've seen before. But inside Aston Martin, they weren't worried about speed. They were worried about survival. Because the problem wasn't showing up on the stopwatch first. It was showing up in the data. In the way the car behaved. In the way it reacted under load. And more importantly, in the way it couldn't be pushed. Drivers weren't complaining about balance at first. They were talking about something harder to describe. A constant disturbance. A feeling that the car wasn't fully under control. And that's where things started to get serious. Because before the season even began, Honda had already detected something abnormal. Not a failure. Not a broken part. A pattern. Vibrations. Strong enough to raise concern. Persistent enough to become a focus. At first, the assumption was simple. Isolate it. Contain it. Move on. But that didn't happen. Because those vibrations didn't stay in one place. They traveled. Through the structure. Through the chassis. Through every connected system. And eventually, they reached the most sensitive part of the entire car. The battery. And that's when everything escalated. Because once the battery starts taking damage, you're no longer dealing with performance loss. You're dealing with failure risk. Which is exactly what Aston Martin started experiencing. Limited running and testing. Constant adjustments before sessions. And then, during race weekends, cars shutting down. Drivers retiring early. Not because of strategy. Because the system couldn't handle it. And here's the part that made it even more difficult to manage. The problem didn't have a single source. It wasn't one component you could replace. It was multiple elements interacting at the same time. Amplifying each other. Creating a vibration pattern that engineers couldn't isolate quickly. And couldn't eliminate easily. Which means Aston Martin isn't dealing with a defect. They're dealing with a design interaction. The way the power unit connects to the chassis. The way the battery is mounted. The way forces move through the entire structure. And when that kind of issue appears this early, it doesn't just slow development. It stops it. Because instead of improving performance, the team is trying to keep the car operational. Trying to finish races. Trying to understand something that isn't fully visible yet. And with Suzuka just days away, that's the worst possible situation. Because the next race won't reduce the problem. It will push it further. And what happens next depends entirely on whether they've understood it in time. But when engineers looked deeper, they realized something even more uncomfortable. The problem wasn't just the engine. And it wasn't just the battery. It was the connection between everything. Because the area where the battery is mounted is physically vibrating with the car itself. And that changes the entire situation. Because now you're not dealing with a faulty component. You're dealing with resonance. A condition where different parts of the car start amplifying each other. The engine produces vibrations. The chassis carries them. And the battery absorbs them. Over and over again. Lap after lap. And here's why that's so dangerous. Because in this new generation of Formula One, the battery isn't just part of the system. It is the system. Energy deployment. Energy recovery. Acceleration. Defense. Everything depends on it. So when the battery is under stress, the entire car becomes unstable, unpredictable, inconsistent, and eventually, unusable. Which explains something most people didn't connect at first. Why Aston Martin isn't just struggling on the straights. Why they're losing time in every single sector. Because if energy delivery isn't stable, you don't just lose speed. You lose control. You lose confidence. And the driver feels it immediately. Under braking. On corner entry. On corner exit. Moments where the car doesn't respond the same way twice. And that's exactly what both drivers started describing. A car that feels disconnected, difficult, uncertain. But here's where it becomes even more serious. Because this kind of vibration doesn't just affect the car, it affects the driver. Inside the cockpit. In China, the situation escalated. The vibrations became so intense, they started causing physical discomfort, numbness, fatigue, a constant disturbance that made continuing almost impossible. And that's when everything changes. Because now it's not just about performance, it's about risk. Which is why Aston Martin had no choice. They had to hold back, run conservative settings, limit energy deployment, protect the car instead of pushing it. But that creates a new problem. Because the more you protect the car, the less you learn about it, the less data you collect, the less progress you make. And the gap to the front keeps growing. And with Suzuka just days away, that gap might become impossible to hide. Because this track doesn't forgive instability, it exposes it. And if the system is still fragile, Suzuka won't just reveal the weakness, it will amplify it. And what happens there could define everything that comes next. But even if Aston Martin manages to reduce the vibrations, even if they protect the battery, even if the car finally finishes a full race distance, there's still one problem they can't ignore: performance. Because when you remove the failures, when you look at pure pace, the car is still nowhere near competitive. And that's the part that makes this even more serious. Because the data from Australia and China tells a very clear story. They're losing time everywhere. Not just on the straights, not just in the corners. Every sector, every lap, every session. Which means this isn't just a reliability issue. It's a complete package limitation. The engine, the energy system, the aerodynamics, the balance. Everything is slightly off. And when you combine all of that, you don't get a small gap. You get a collapse. Because in this new era, energy is everything. And Aston Martin is struggling to generate it. Struggling to recover it. Struggling to deploy it efficiently. Which explains why even when the car is running, it still looks slow. It still looks disconnected. It still looks like it's holding back. And that creates a situation no team wants to face. Because now they're fighting two battles at the same time. Fix reliability and build performance. But those two goals don't always work together. Because to unlock speed, you have to push the system. Push the energy deployment. Push the limits of the car. But right now, that's exactly what they can't afford to do. So they're trapped. If they push, they risk failure. If they don't, they fall further behind. And with Suzuka approaching, that decision becomes critical. Because this circuit demands everything. High-speed commitment, precision, confidence. If the car isn't stable, if the energy system isn't consistent, if the driver can't trust what's underneath them, then the lap time disappears instantly. But here's the detail that could make things even worse. Every time they replace a battery, every time they introduce a new energy unit, they move closer to penalties. Because there's a strict limit on how many they can use. And they're already approaching that limit after just 2 races. Which means the problem isn't just technical. It's strategic. Because even if they solve everything later, they could already be starting from behind. Grid penalties, lost track position, a championship that slips away before development catches up. And that leads to one final, uncomfortable question. What if the real issue isn't just vibration? Or the battery? Or even performance? What if the real issue is that this entire concept is not working the way they expected? Because if that's true, then Suzuka won't just expose a weakness. It will confirm something much bigger. That Aston Martin isn't just struggling. They're fundamentally behind. And in Formula One, that's the hardest gap to close. And this is where Suzuka becomes the breaking point. Because up until now, Aston Martin could still hide behind explanations. New regulations, limited testing, early season instability. All of that sounds reasonable. All of that buys time. But Suzuka doesn't give you time. Suzuka gives you answers. Because this circuit doesn't just test speed. It tests structure. High-speed direction changes. Constant lateral load. Corners that demand total confidence every single lap. And that's exactly what Aston Martin doesn't have right now. Confidence. In the car. In the system. In the way everything works together. And that's a dangerous place to arrive before one of the most demanding races on the calendar. Because if the vibrations are still there, Suzuka won't just reveal them. It will amplify them. Faster corners mean higher loads. Higher loads mean stronger resonance. And stronger resonance means more damage. Faster. More aggressively. More visibly. Which means this could escalate very quickly. from a limitation to a failure. But here's the real pressure. Aston Martin doesn't have a perfect fix. Not yet. They have countermeasures, adjustments, isolation changes, mounting revisions, software tweaks, all designed to reduce the problem. But reducing is not solving. And solving is what they need. Because if the system still isn't stable, they will be forced to hold back again. Lower energy deployment, safer settings, less aggressive operation. And that creates the worst possible scenario. A Formula One car that can't be pushed. A machine designed for the limit, forced to operate below it. And when that happens, you're not competing. You're surviving. But here's the part that could define everything. What if Suzuka doesn't just expose the weakness? What if it forces a decision? Because if the problem reaches a critical point, the team may have no choice. They either redesign parts of the system, or accept that this concept won't deliver in the short term. And that's a massive shift. Because redesign means time, races lost, development delayed, and rivals moving further ahead. But accepting it means something even worse. Admitting that the car, as it is, can't compete. And that's the moment every team fears. Because once you reach that point, you're no longer chasing performance. You're chasing recovery. And recovery in Formula One is always slower than progress. Which brings everything back to one moment. Suzuka. Not just another race. A test. A revelation. A point where everything becomes clear. Because if Aston Martin arrives, and the problem is still there, then the conclusion is unavoidable. This isn't temporary. This isn't just bad luck. This is a structural failure. And if that's confirmed, then what we're watching right now is not the start of a season. It's the beginning of a crisis. One that could define their entire 2026 campaign. And possibly everything that comes after it.